concluding the third week of the Israeli-United States effort to emasculate Iran, and we're sort of in a standoff period. I think people have compared Iran to the Black Knight in the old Monty Python movie. The more that he loses a leg, an arm, the more he thinks that it's just a scratch. By all traditional methodology and criteria, Iran is now inert. This is what Donald Trump keeps saying. The Navy is non-existent. There is no Air Force. There are no missile defenses that can interrupt Allied planes going over the country. The Army is useless because nobody is fighting on the ground. We keep hearing that, and I think accurately, that missiles and drones have been tried either by bombing or by being intercepted or being expended to about 10%. So what is the remaining obstacle? Target-wise, it's just 2 or 3. There seems to be caches or secret locations where you have 3 or 4 ballistic missiles or 3 or 4 drone sites with maybe 20 or 30 drones, and those are very hard to find. So you're going to be able to stop almost all of the incoming, but not all of them. And because they're aimed at residential areas. Remember, the United States and Israel is trying to hit military targets in command and control, and any civilian damage is collateral. But in the case of Iran, it's deliberately targeting hotels in Dubai or hotels and airports in Qatar, or cluster bomb attacks on civilian high-rises in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. That's what they want to do. So what's going to happen? The thing to remember, I think, historically, is that tactical success is not necessarily equivalent to strategic victory or resolution. By that I mean, you can argue that when Napoleon invaded Russia, he won almost every battle and he captured Moscow, but he did not have a plan to force the Tsar out. Alexander, he had no plan to force him out. He had no ability to go beyond Moscow to get the fleeing imperial forces of Russia. Same thing with the Germans. They won every battle up until they were within the first subway station of Moscow and around December 10th, 1941. But they did not have a plan to, or they were not able to take Leningrad, St. Petersburg, take Moscow, and drive all of the Russians out of European and industrialized Russia, or, barring that, to bomb the factories that were on the other side of the Ural Mountain. They did not have a plan. So they didn't have a strategic victory. They had impressive tactical victories. We had impressive tactical victories in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's hard to think we lost a single battle in Iraq, but we did not have a plan of strategic resolution. So where we are now in this war is, Iran's strategy is the following: that it can withstand repeated attacks on all of its military assets because it believes the United States cannot afford, either politically, economically, socially, culturally, to put ground troops after the fiascos in Afghanistan and Iraq. So it doesn't have to worry about an invasion to displace the regime. It also believes that the more that we hit any civilian targets out of frustration, the more it will hurt the Iranian people, and the more the theocracy will say, you may not like us, but the fact that you don't have water or power or fuel is because they hate you and us. And that's another strategy they are taking. In other words, they're saying, as long as we have oil, Karg Island, and as long as we have these huge oil fields, when you get tired of pounding us into rubble, you're going to go back to the United States. Israel's going to go back and be quiet, and we're going to get all of our oil revenues, and we're going to have them, and we're going to buy from Russia, North Korea, and China missiles, drones, recreate our own drone industry, and we probably have enough fissionable material that you didn't get, and nobody could get it, it's hidden deep in the mountains, that we will make bombs. And this time we're going to use them. because we understand what you will do next time. And more importantly, we are planning practically that Donald Trump is an aberration. The last 7 presidents didn't attack us, even though we blew up your American embassy in Beirut, your barracks of Marines in Beirut, Khobar Towers, behind the USS Cole, behind the embassy destruction in Africa. So we believe that the norm is not Trump. He will be gone in 2.5 years, and we will get either a left-wing Democrat or a neo-isolationist Republican, or some Republican that's feckless and not going to do anything. So all we have to do is outlast Trump and have the oil, and we'll come back. Everybody says his opposition said he had no point, no agenda, no purpose. He did. He said it on March 1st and March 20th. He said he had a multifaceted agenda. Number 1, he wanted to destroy the ability to launch missiles. He's pretty close to that, not completely, but get rid of their missiles, not just the missiles that they launch, but the ability to make them. Number 2, he said he wanted to destroy their air forces and air defenses so that they would have not air superiority, but the Americans and the Israelis have air supremacy. When you reach air supremacy, you can use tactical aircraft. That would mean Warthogs at low level, Apaches. You can do anything you want if you have air supremacy. And we do now. He wanted to destroy, additionally, the Navy. He's almost done that. Number 4, he wanted to preclude the ability of Iran not just to launch ballistic missiles, but to make another bomb. He's bombed all of the nuclear sites that he hit before. He's bombed the fabrication plants. He's killed more of the science. He's even attacked a university research area. So pretty much it'll be very, very hard for them for 8-9 years unless they get a lot of Chinese help and North Korean help, and they come in masse. The 5th agenda is a little bit less clear, because he never said my reason is to go in there and he might have thought that, he might have implied it, but if you look at his written statement and what he said formally, regime change. And yet we all know that the regime change, whether it be the Venezuela model or a true uprising of the dissatisfied Iranian public to take control of the government and have a constitutional system, whichever the replacement is, it's preferable to the mullahs. But we are not going to be able to shepherd that in, because we're not going to go in on the ground. All we can do is emasculate the theocracy and then hope that there's a popular uprising. And then we have to be very careful, because if we're going to drain the theocracy of their ability to recoup and have money, then you have to go into Karg Island. If you go into Karg Island and grab the oil or attack the oil fields, then you're hurting the people that are supposedly you want to help to take over the government. At some point, and I don't know what it is, you don't know what it is, I don't think anybody knows where it is, Iran will have no more viable targets. The United States will be looking at its arsenals and wanting to make sure that we have enough if China doesn't go into Taiwan because it's angry that we have been in Venezuela, kicked it out of Venezuela, kicked it out of Iran, kicked it out of everywhere we could. We have to be very careful. At some point, the Israelis, the Americans, and the Iranians will think it's not in their interest to continue. And we don't know when that point is. For us in the United States, it's when the economy and the price of gas gets to such a level that it becomes almost impossible, given the hostile media and the propaganda that's coming from the left, that this is a disaster, that Donald Trump cannot win the midterms, and therefore the entire MAGA agenda will be inert in the next 2.5 years. If that starts to crystallize, then he will probably say, we've done enough, and we now turn it over to the Iranian people. Then it'll be a question, will the Iranians, when there's not an active war, go on? And when there's such damage to the theocracy, will they come out, especially if we arm them or if we have people in there that can arm them? And will that regime fall in the next 4 or 5 months? If it should do that, that will be to the credit of Donald Trump.
What I'm getting at is he's done all of these things, and foreign and abroad, but he needs now to connect them, these spokes of the wheel, and the hub is the economy. The midterm will be determined on the economy. So each thing he does, he needs to emphasize. What do I mean? I shut down 2 million. I deported 2 million people, and I shut down 4 million people coming a year. That means more houses are going to be open, more apartments are going to be open for American citizens. That means when you go to your dialysis clinic, it's not going to be as swarmed. That means that we are not going to break local budgets, emergency rooms, all the stuff that adds up to our cost. And this is the very beginning. I'm going to keep pushing this. He needs to say that. He needs to say, when I went into Washington, and even Chicago, the burglary rate, the assault, the rape rate, and these have economic consequences. When people feel safe, they go out and purchase things. They increase GDP. They lower the cost of crime, and that's my point. When I go overseas and I job on, I know I sound obnoxious sometimes, but when I tell Canada, you better get up to 2%, that means that our allies will share the burden of Western defense, and that puts less pressure on us to build weaponry and take over from them. He needs to say that, and he needs to say that.
America is in the world's interest.
Yes,
security.
And everything he's doing has an economic aspect to it. It really does. And so I hope he can do that, because eventually, the only thing, I'm not at all pessimistic about the economy or prices or inflation. I just don't know if they're going to kick in these programs enough by November of next year to get, inflation down to 0.3 or something in the third quarter. One of the things he's battling is the Democrats are nihilists. So Kevin Hassard and others have suggested that the fourth quarter GDP that the federal bank in Atlanta had projected at 4% GDP. That's astounding. They think it's going to go down by 1.5 to 2.5, just because of the 6 weeks, $15 billion a day minimum government spending, much more in the economy, shutdown. That cost hundreds of billions of dollars over the whole total economy. And when you put in the shutdown, and then you're going to see that the interest rates are, Jerome Powell is not going to lower them down, because he is a popular icon among the left, and he's a beleaguered target of Trump, and they think they've made him into a folk hero. So he's going to try to keep interest rates high, and they are going to go on the offensive. There's a bunch of little people in a room at the DNC, and they have their talking points. Today, it's affordability. They came up with affordability. And then a month ago, it was Epstein letters, and shut down. They get the key buzzword, and we're going to see recession. We're going to Wall Street collapse. So if he can battle the fake news, if he can get the interest rates down, if he can avoid another shutdown in January or later in the year, he'll be fine. So when you say that you're going to allow Silicon Valley with $9 to $11 trillion in market capitalization, wealthiest nexus in the history of civilization, to bypass Americans and bring in people largely from China and India and Asia with exceptional degrees and skills not found here, then you're kind of violating America first. So you have to understand that. Your average person said, well, I thought you didn't want to outsource or offshore, and now you're kind of inshoring people from different countries, and we have all these Americans out of work. And then, of course, if you look at the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, what's the meme? What's the theme, Jack? It is today's graduates are out of work. And I had a wonderful conversation with 8 of the Stanford Review people. These kids are from all over the world, but They speak perfect English, the ones that are not American born. They're brilliant. They're far better educated, far better informed and brighter than I was at that age. And when I talk to them, I ask them specifically, and they say there's more and more students than they ever have seen at Stanford that are conservative. There's no doubt about it. They're a little worried about Nick Fuentes because he has an underground level of support that they think is astonishing, that hasn't really hit the mainstream media. But when you talk to them and you say, what is the greatest, this was my question, what are you most worried about? It's just over jobs. And when they graduate, people who were on the fast track in economics and MBAs, fiscal policy, international, it's all AI at the entry level. So they think, if I'm going to be hired by Goldman Sachs to do assessments of the copper industry, an AI code can do it. So Trump needs to say that. He needs to say, we've got to reform education and make sure that with the people, we don't have these superfluous majors. He can't do it himself, but he can jawbone it. And then he's going to have to say, we're going to, within 2 or 3 years, we won't need these people because we are going to have a Marshall Plan to train our own people. And then I understand he's interested in the African-American vote, so he says historic black colleges. But I looked at the data, Jack. There's almost no foreign students there. There's no Chinese students.
I think there are 30 Chinese students in historically black colleges.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. This is the most racially inclusive society in the world.